The Manilow Method podcast is a production by Logan Allen and me, Barry Harris. Now, let's start the show.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Logan Allen Barry Harris with the Manilow Method. We have part 2 of an album discussion here today. We purposefully spliced this album in half because we knew it was going to be an insanely long discussion. We just published part 1 of our discussion of 1981's If I Should Love Again. Masterpiece of an album. Go back, check out part 1 before you do this. If you've already seen that, welcome back, welcome in. We are so excited to finish this. I really quick want to show you something I forgot to hold up on part 1. This is, without a glare hopefully, is the Arista 45 single of the Old Songs that they put out. The Old Songs was the lead single from If I Should Love Again. The B-side was Don't Fall in Love with Me. I forgot to show that on part 1, but when you have so many things to talk about, Barry can back me up, we forget about things. There's things we forget about all the time. Oh, Manilow pun all the time. There it is. Here we go. We're going to get into side 2 of If I Should Love Again right now, and we've got a big whopper of a track starting off side 2. Track 6 on If I Should Love Again is the song Somewhere Down the Road, written by Cynthia Weil and Tom Snow. Now, as we mentioned in part 1, we believe that the Old Songs is a Clive Davis pick, meaning it was one of the songs that Manilow was contractually obligated to use from Clive Davis's list of choosings. And we believe that this song is the second Clive Davis pick. We're going to lock that in, I do believe. This song peaked at number 21. It was the second single from the album. And right off the bat, I've gotten so used to the way they do this live. I don't know if you have, Barry, but when I listened to this record version in preparation for this episode, it caught me off guard because I didn't remember that they double the intro. Now I'm gonna play this in the live key, so I hope I don't forget it. It's like do this whole thing here. There's this walk down, and he starts singing right there. But on the record, they do that whole thing twice, and that caught me off guard. So I'm glad they made that change live because I'm not really sure it needed to be doubled. And it's really weird to hear this song with a rigid tempo, meaning that the tempo is consistent through the majority of the song, because live, when he sings it acoustically with just him and the piano, the tempo is fluctuating the whole time. There's holds at the ends of sections. It's weird to hear it just happen continuously. Barry, what do you think stands out as differences between the record version and the live version?
So, the studio version of Somewhere Down the Road is a power ballad with big drums and a very explosive final chorus, and it's arranged by Artie Butler, who is one of his most reliable orchestral collaborators, who's, did the orchestrations for Even Now, the song. We talked about that on Season 1, Episode 1, and so it makes sense to bring Artie in to do this specific arrangement. But what's particularly remarkable about Somewhere Down the Road, this song was a hit. In fact, I'll tell you how much this impacted the culture. My mother, my beautiful mother, who was so kind to give me permission to share this on air, she was class of 1982, and her class song, they had a vote. And unfortunately, Somewhere Down the Road did not win. It was number 2. Was Somewhere Down the Road. Actually, this is interesting, Logan. You'll never guess what number 1 was.
What was it?
Through the Years.
Really?
And the reason that's interesting for those who don't know, Through the Years was written by Marty Panzer. The lyrics written by Marty Panzer, who was also one of Barry Manilow's primary collaborators, but this was a collaboration that Marty did outside of Barry Manilow. So that's kind of ironic. But
what
yes.
What are the odds? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, but number 2 runner-up was Somewhere Down the Road. So it was a popular song at the time, and I must say, of all the Clive Davis picks, I believe that Somewhere Down the Road is the very finest and most beautiful song that Clive ever picked for Barry Manilow. And I think Manilow himself shares that opinion because he speaks so highly of this every time he introduces Somewhere Down the Road in concert. But what I wanted to point out is on the Complete Collection and Then Some box set, which was released in 1992, there contains a solo demo version of Somewhere Down the Road, and I think that may have influenced him when he was going on the Greatest Hits tour, which was his tour in the 1990s to support the box set, that this really stripped down demo inspired him to really strip it down in concert. And so when he performs this live, it's just pretty much the piano accompanying him, and at one point he just goes completely a cappella for the final chorus. Remember, I just said that the final chorus is so explosive on the record, but live, it's so delicate. It is so quiet. And I actually will never forget the most memorable performance I've ever seen of this in person. I saw Barry Manilow in Allentown in 2017, and he did Somewhere Down the Road. And he talked about his father. He mentioned that his father left when he was very young. And he said, so I have a lot to think about when I sing this song, he said. And he did it with such passion. Like, the audience was so quiet. And it was really, really emotional, and it was very touching. This song, Somewhere Down the Road, is, again, it's a beautiful song. Cynthia Weil, interestingly, who wrote this song with Tom Snow, this is a departure for Cynthia Weil because Cynthia Weil was married to Barry Mann, the legendary songwriter. And Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil formed a legendary songwriting team. Probably the most notable song that Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil have written is You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling. And another fact for Barry Manilow fans is that Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil later, after this album, went on to collaborate with Barry Manilow, and they wrote Dancing in the Aisles. So Cynthia Weil, an incredibly accomplished songwriter, this might be just one of her finest moments.
I wanted to say here, this was a top 40 single for Barry Manilow, and it doesn't have a key change. The list of songs that checked both of those boxes in the Manilow catalog, it's not a very long list of top 40 singles to not have a key change. I thought that was very interesting. And also, he drops the key of this live. He drops it down to B flat major, and the record is in C. So again, that's another rare example of him dropping a song's key, because he's pretty consistent when recording songs and then bringing them to the live setting and keeping them in the same key, which I think is very respectable from a vocalist perspective, to have the wherewithal in the studio to record them in keys that are comfortable to sing in. And also, there's no fade out on this song. Hallelujah. Praise everything. There's no fade out. I don't enjoy fade outs.
So, Logan, have you ever seen Barry Manilow's appearance on Ally McBeal?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, okay. We'll have to see if there's some way that we can see that and for you to see it, because it's actually really amazing. There are so many memorable moments in this episode. We probably don't have time here to explain the whole thing because it's really great, but there is an acoustic performance of Somewhere Down the Road in the episode, and he plays it on the piano. One of the very few times that I've ever seen Barry Manilow play the piano on this song, and let me tell you, it is absolutely an amazing performance.
Wow. That sounds very interesting. Because as far as I've known, it's always been one of the songs like he'll sit on a stool at the front of the stage and sing it. It's not a very common one for him to actually be the one playing the piano part. Okay, we're going to move on here. This album is so good. I'm just looking at the songs we're about to talk about, and I'm getting excited. So let's actually do it. Track 7 is written by Barry Manilow and Adrian Anderson. This is No Other Love. Oh my gosh, this song has grown on me since when I first heard it. I wasn't sure, but man, every time I listen to it now, I just keep wanting to start it over and start it over. It is such a great song, and it was a live staple in the early 80s once this album came out. famously done the live at Blenheim Palace concert in 1983. He did it there, so you can find an officially released version of this song being played live. But man, the more I listened to this song, the more I just couldn't help but think this is very reminiscent of mid-70s Manilow. Very "this one's for you" vibes. And which is ironic because Adrian Anderson, our lyricist on this song, was all over the "This One's For You" record. So I thought that was very interesting how reminiscent it was. I truly think that this is one of the best deep cuts from the 80s. Barry, what do you have to say about this awesome song?
I agree that this "No Other Love" is one of the best deep cuts, especially from the 1980s, and the way that this was presented in concert was absolutely stunning. This is actually one of the songs that I would most wish to see live performed somehow. And interestingly, right before Barry Manilow started his residency at the Paris in Las Vegas, he wrote a note in the Barrygram. The Barrygram is the quarterly fan magazine that ran from 1978 through the late 2000s. And Barry Manilow wrote a personal note about the preparation of the Paris show, and in that note, he claimed that they had rehearsed "No Other Love." So what we don't know, and perhaps what we want to ask you in the viewing audience, if you happen to know the answer, did Barry Manilow ever play this at the Paris? So we can confirm he definitely rehearsed it because he said he did, but we don't know if it actually ever made it to the live show. And the middle section is so beautiful. Just again, just like "If I Should Love Again," the title track, it's so classical. It's a composition, and it's so beautiful. And then, of course, if you do watch that live at Blenheim Palace video, that middle section transitions into "Mandy." And I thought that was such a great marriage of the two songs. They're both songs about losing love, and so wrapping them up together was such a brilliant arrangement choice. And the one thing I'll also point out about this song is Will Lee plays the bass, and he has another one of my favorite Will Lee moments. I don't know if you caught this, Logan, but at the very end on the outro, after the last note and it starts repeating and fading, do you hear that bass slide Willie does?
Yes, I caught that one. Yeah,
like only Willie, he has the taste and sensibility to know just where to put the right touches, and it's beautiful. And I should mention the orchestrator on this song is Jimmy Haskell. And Jimmy Haskell, to tell you all in the audience who that is, he arranged many popular songs such as "The Tide is High" by Blondie. He arranged "If You Leave Me Now" by Chicago, but he also most notably arranged "Bridge Over Troubled Water" by Simon and Garfunkel. And if you listen to "Bridge Over Troubled Water" by Simon and Garfunkel, the orchestration I would describe as bombastic. And I mean that in a good way. It's so explosive. And so for every arrangement that Jimmy Haskell does for the Manilow catalog, including here on "If I Should Love Again," this orchestration just is explosive. And so I love this sound of the record. The LA studio musicians that we referred to in part one, this song, "No Other Love," I think was one of the very first, or among the first songs to be conceived and recorded for this project. And I do want to do one quick sidebar and tack back to "If I Should Love Again" really quickly, because we talked about that alternate version of "If I Should Love Again" and how beautiful it was and how beautifully orchestrated it was. I actually think that alternate version of "If I Should Love Again" was recorded on the same session as "No Other Love" and the song that comes after this one. Although I did check the complete collection and then some box set liner notes, it claims that the credits on "If I Should Love Again" alternate version is the same as the old songs. I do want to question whether that's accurate, because the orchestration of the alternate version of If I Should Love Again sounds very similar to No Other Love. So I would bet that was this particular session where we're hearing No Other Love. So I just wanted to go on record and say that, because I feel that Jimmy Haskell is adding his own distinct approach to this song. And again, it works really well. And that outro, again, I mentioned that Will Lee bass moment. The entire outro is just so beautiful. You can't help but feel something really emotional when you listen to this.
Again, we said we were going to drill this topic into the ground. The fact that this is potentially the most romantic album that Barry Manilow ever made. The joke he makes in concert, you just had to have a cigarette after you listened to it. And that was the joke that he made before he sang If I Should Love Again at the concert where I heard it. If you haven't watched part one, you know that I hold that over Barry's head, that I've heard it and that he hasn't. And something else to hold over Barry's head is the fact that I've also heard this next song live in that very same concert. He used this next song as a transition. He just sang the chorus of it, but I still count it. He sang the chorus of this song as a transition into the title track. This is track 8, Fools Get Lucky. Once again, written by Barry Manilow and John Bettis. You'll remember that's a name that popped up on track 4, Don't Fall in Love with Me. So it's the same writing team as that song. Personally, I think this song is better than Don't Fall in Love with Me. This song is just, again, it's like No Other Love. On first listen, I wasn't sure, but the more I listen to it, it just sticks with me. Something that I thought was very bizarre about this song is the first chorus doesn't happen until a minute 25 seconds in. That is very late, considering how, standard pop radio and standard pop songs kind of operate. That's very late into the song. You're nearing the halfway point of the song at that point when the first chorus is happening. I absolutely love the chorus melody. It's kind of haunting in a way, even though the song is happy. And that's something we've talked about, how Manilow can take sad songs and make them happy. But in this case, to me, he's almost making a happy song feel sad. It's a weird juxtaposition that I can't even begin to explore, or that we don't even have the time to begin to explore. But this song really speaks to me in ways that it hadn't really in the past. And I mean, when I heard it live, I was 5 years old, so obviously it didn't speak much to me then. But it really speaks to me now. And I want to mention, before I let you loose on this track, because I know you love this song as well, he hits a high B flat at the end of this. Like me. That is so rare in the Manilow catalog. There's times where he'll get up there in falsetto, but this is out there. It's not a falsetto note. It's kind of a mixed note, which you don't really get out of Manilow a lot, especially up in that. I would call that a tenor note. That is absolutely a tenor note, that high B flat. Barry, what makes this song so special to you?
Well, I think that this particular song represents an inflection point in the album, and I think this is such a pivotal moment, and this is actually the perfect time for me to bring up another tinfoil hat conspiracy theory.
Boom.
Okay, so here it is. I believe that each one of these songs on the sequence of the album tells a complete story about a character. I believe that this whole album is telling a complete story of what it is like to lose love and cope with that loss. But what I mean in this song being an inflection point is the fact that for the first time, there's hope. And when you hear this song, finally, the character is out of his funk. He has now found love. And I think what you just said, Logan, I think is actually what you highlighted about the contrast of a very optimistic lyric that musically maybe feels more pessimistic. Maybe that is supposed to be the contrast, that yes, you found love, but yet you still just had this brutal experience. And I'm going to keep revisiting this theme throughout the rest of this discussion, because I think the final tracks help really solidify this narrative, and I'll have a little bit more to say when we get to the other tracks. But just to round out Fools Get Lucky, one of the things that I wanted to point out about this song is this is the John Bettis collaboration, and I think this may be probably the most amazing lyric that John Bettis ever gave to Barry Manilow. I feel that there's such a purity and an honesty in this song, and I feel the vulnerability. And again, I'm only giving you my opinion, what I feel that I'm here, what I'm inferring. Only the artist knows what this really means to them. But I'm inferring that this is just a very deeply personal song, and it's a very vulnerable moment. And like you said, Logan, we have this tenor note at the end. This is something that Manilow does not do. He does not consider himself a singer. He would not willingly do these kinds of notes, but I think that this is a really special song, and I think he's going to check all his inhibitions at the door and pour his heart into this song. So I feel something from the artist and their performance. This one really speaks to me. And the last thing I want to say about Fools Get Lucky is we apparently have some information that suggests that Fools Get Lucky was performed in the early 90s on the Greatest Hits tour in the United Kingdom, but we don't have any recordings of what that might sound like. It has never appeared on Manilow TV. Hopefully that might appear on Manilow TV eventually, so we can hear what apparently could be a full-blown performance of Fools Get Lucky. Unlike the excerpt that you heard, there may have been a full performance, and that leads the big question, Logan: how did he end it?
Exact. There's no way he did the high B flat live.
No.
There's no way. I wanted to do something here because I found this quote from an interview earlier today when I was taking notes on this. I wanted to read this. All Music is the source on this. Reviewer named Brian Buss. After the album was released, he said that the album is classic Barry Manilow, shamelessly well-crafted adult contemporary. And it says he concluded this review by saying, "It may not be the biggest album of his career, but If I Should Love Again showcases Manilow's greatest skill, making heartbreak sound hopeful." That, I don't think anything we're going to say will top that verbiage of describing this album. Making heartbreak sound hopeful. And that is how I want to transfer into track number 9. This is another song on this album that was written solely by Barry Manilow. In fact, it's solely performed by Barry Manilow. It is just him singing and playing the piano. This song is called I Haven't Changed the Room. First of all, there's no fade out. Thank you, Mr. Manilow, for doing that. But also, we refer to this all the time. If somebody's turned it into a drinking game, take a shot. We're going to say it. This feels like he's starting to let the Paradise Cafe sound creep in a little bit. Some of the changes towards the end of the song just are so jarring in a way that it makes sense, but it catches your ear. And that's Paradise Cafe in a nutshell to me. That's the reason that Paradise Cafe is on my wall, is because of how genius it is from a composition standpoint. I think this song, with a little tweaking and added instruments, could have very well fit into that album. Barry, this song is obviously the most stripped back of this album. What is your take on this one?
When I started to sing and play piano back in the day, this was actually one of the first songs that I gravitated towards.
Really?
Yeah. So actually, the very first material that I ever gravitated towards, I started out as a pianist. I didn't sing for a very long time. I started when I was 5 years old playing piano, and then at about the age of 10 is when I started to get into singing. And the very first thing that I ever tried to sing was Say No More from Paradise Cafe.
Wow.
Yeah. And And then shortly thereafter, this was among the first wave of songs that I attempted to sing. Even at the age of 10, I felt really attracted to the beauty of this song. And to this day, it's stunning, just in the statement that it says. You know, it's an idea of being hopeful, and being hopeful in a way that is completely futile.
Making heartbreak sound hopeful.
Yes, exactly. I walked right into that one. But really, think about it, though. I kept the room the same if you happen to be passing by, to make sure you recognize it, I haven't changed the room. Is that person ever going to come by and see the room? I think the answer is no. But that is what I just encapsulated right there, is what inspires me as an artist. Like, how does Barry Manilow influence me? That right there. So I haven't changed the room. I think, it's such a simple song. It contrasts with the rest of the album that's so orchestrated and arranged, but to put something so bare and so raw, it has such a great placement here on track number 9. And if you don't know this song, you definitely need to listen to it.
Absolutely. I say absolutely a lot on this show, by the way. I rewatched season 1. I say absolutely so much. Now, are we absolutely ready?
Absolutely.
We're going to absolutely round out this absolutely awesome track list. This is track 10, the final track. This is terrible. We're spiraling, Barry. We've been talking for forever. This is track 10, the final track on the original release of If I Should Love Again. This is Let's Take All Night to Say Goodbye. We're rounding out here with another Barry Manilow and John Bettis collaboration song. When I listen to this song, it boggles my mind how it couldn't have been a live staple for years. I know he played it live and he would do it at the ends of shows, but it just, at least for the 80s, it would have been the perfect way to round out, because I know when he went to the UK, We'll Meet Again was kind of the sayonara song of the shows. This feels like a missed opportunity when it comes to songs that could have been staples at the ends of the shows for a very long time. I really do think that this is the perfect ending to his most romantic album of his career. Barry, what are your feelings about having this song as the closing track?
I think this particular song is the most romantic song on the entire album, because this is the union song. This is definitely the happiest song. It feels the happiest of all of the songs. And one thing I want to point out is that the timing is in 3/4 timing. This is a waltz.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's take all night. And that's a little bit unusual. Weekend in New England, for example, is a waltz. It's in 3/4 time, not 4/4 time like most pop songs that you hear. At 3/4 time, it doesn't have the potential to sound commercial, although I think this song sounds very commercial. And I guess I'm a bit surprised that they didn't try this as a single at some point, because I think this could have made an impact on the radio. So I think this is a bit of a lost classic that perhaps people who are watching and listening to our program who have never really listened to all of the album beyond the hits, I think will find themselves particularly loving this track, Let's Take All Night to Say Goodbye. But there's 2 other interesting notes I have for this song. Number 1, Bill Page plays the flute as he played on the If I Should Love Again title track earlier on side 1. Bill Page is a name you should search on YouTube. Search Bill Page and Lawrence Welk, because Bill Page was a member of the Lawrence Welk Band. And if you do a YouTube search, you'll see a couple of really interesting clips. One of the features that Lawrence Welk would have on his program is that he would feature Bill Page playing dozens of instruments. They would have a station full of all of these wind instruments, and they would play a song, and he would just switch them out and keep playing all these different parts. And so I think that Manilow may have seen the Lawrence Welk show and had seen these segments, and I don't think it's an accident that Bill Page was asked to not only play on this record, but also go on tour with him, because Bill Page was his touring woodwind player for the early 80s. So I recommend everybody go take a moment and appreciate his musicianship. It's really amazing that he's so talented and can play anything. So I wanted to just highlight that. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is something that perhaps may have been the first example where something was really recycled from a previous song, because this song is called Let's Take All Night to Say Goodbye. And there was a song that Barry Manilow recorded very early on in his career called Let's Take Some Time to Say Goodbye. It was a non-album single released on Bell Records after he had released his debut album, and later it was added to Barry Manilow 1 on the CD remaster in 2006, so it's very accessible. And one of the things that's notable, not only is the title similar, but there is a line, "You make the coffee and we'll sit beside the fire," is a line in Let's Take Some Time to Say Goodbye, and in Let's Take All Night to Say Goodbye, he says, "You make the coffee and I'll light the fire." I don't know, but that sounds like an idea that may have resonated with him that he decided to use in this particular song. So I did want to point that out for those that are keeping track and know all of his discography, that this is a motif that was reused in this particular song. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
Well, and it's something interesting, that line, "You make the coffee, I'll light the fire." At the old songs, the first line is, "Candles burning, glasses are chilled, and soon she'll be by." So we're kind of full circle here. I mean, he's starting the album waiting for her to show up, and we're ending the album. It's nighttime now, and we don't want to say goodbye. Let's take all night to say goodbye. So all this stuff that happens in between, it's like I think that kind of feeds into your theory of it being kind of a overarching storyline throughout this album.
Yeah, and I wanted to quick say is, so how this storyline wraps up is that the resolution to this album is that you don't move on when you have a loss in your life, you move forward. And I think that's what this song represents. It's moving forward. You don't forget about the love that you had. You don't pretend like it didn't exist. You don't move on from it. And so I think that what he's presenting is a very realistic situation, because I think a lot of stories sometimes have a fantasy element in it. And I think this is really signaling realism. What is it like to experience a very rough parting of ways? What is it like? This song, I think, really solidifies for me the story concept. It's almost like you could think of it as a rock opera. It's no different.
Pop opera.
A pop opera, exactly.
A popera. There you go.
A popera, yes, exactly. So, but that's why I think this is so well regarded as a grand artistic statement. And yes, so like I said, this album and this song in particular, very romantic.
You know, I've always been drawn to music that can convey such difficult messages to put into words, but there are very few artists that I get drawn to that do it so well. And what you just said reminds me of it's so random, but another band that I listen to has a lyric that says, "I've learned to live beside it, and even though it's over now, I will always be reminded." That, I think, helps. Again, that was so random. That's from another band that's not even Barry Manilow, but I hope you'll indulge me there. I think that lyric kind of sums this up as well, is you don't move on, you move forward. And I think that's a great way to signal into yet another part of this discussion that we've yet to talk about. We have some little extra bonus goodies to dig into here. The first one that is, none of these are really well known, but the first one that's probably the most well-known of the three is a song called "You're Running Too Hard." When they re-released the album, this was tucked on at the end after Let's Take All Night to Say Goodbye, and it's a Marty Panzer lyric. Barry Manilow and Marty Panzer. And I have to say, not sure what I was expecting from this song the first time I ever listened to it, but it certainly was not a bluesy shuffle. Like, this is the epitome of stereotypical bluesy shuffle. You even have the really corny background vocals that are like, ah-ooh, ah-ooh. You even have, it's just the typical shuffle, and I like the vibe. It doesn't really fit with the rest of the songs for me.
No.
Barry, what? This kind of comes out of nowhere, honestly, and I'm not really sure what to think of it. What do you think of it?
Well, I remember what it was like to get the CD reissue and put it in and skip right to track 11 so I could hear this brand new song. And like you, I was floored. This was not what I was expecting to hear. And it explains why we don't see Marty Panzer on the If I Should Love Again album, because Marty Panzer did write for the album, but the songs that were written are so stylistically different than what actually ended up on the record. It just didn't fit. I should also mention that Bruce Sussman, he is missing from this album. And I would say that Bruce Sussman would be the first to say that he does not do pop writing. He does Broadway writing. He does story songs, situations, scenes. And none of that is on this record.
Which is why Copacabana, Bermuda Triangle, all of these songs that were huge, they're Bruce Sussman lyrics. They're story songs.
Yeah.
That is the guy's bread and butter. And that makes sense why he would go on to write Harmony.
Yeah.
With Barry Manilow, is he is about story writing, about long form writing, and he just so happens to also have the talent to be able to cram in stories into 3.5-minute pop songs. But please continue.
Yeah, so you're running too hard. I listened to the music, and we do not have any musician credits, so we don't know who played on this, but I'm going to take a guess that this was done during the first sessions. I believe that we're hearing Will Lee play the bass, because I know his style, and it fits his style. I could be wrong about this, but I'm simply making a guess, and I believe we have Bill Mays playing all of those keyboards in the background, and I believe we're hearing more than one keyboard, so I think there's a layering effect in terms of the keyboards that are recorded on this album. And I also believe that the backing vocals that you hear are not session singers. I believe these are multi-track Barry Manilow vocals in the background. What do you think, Logan?
Again, it's one of those things where who knows if we'll ever know for sure. I hope we know for sure someday. Maybe the BarryNet will post something about it. BarryNet, by the way, fantastic source for everything Barry Manilow. People leave concert reviews on there. They've got, the merchandise links and the albums, and it's just, we reference the BarryNet so much, so we recommend that you do as well. I would be interested to know what session it is, because looking here at my sheet, it's very obvious the two separate sessions. Who played in which area? Will Lee on bass, Ed Green on drums. Like, these people very obviously played, like Dean Parks on guitar. These people very obviously played on the first sessions, the LA sessions that originally made the album. And I think it might hold some water to say that this could have been done in the first sessions, because they may not have known the overall vibe and the overall presence that the album was going to have, which makes sense why they would put the effort into doing a song. I mean, because this is like that is not like anything on the album. So it makes sense that early on in the original sessions, they would be more open to trying something a little more drastic than they would in the second round of sessions, when they kind of know where they're going with it. So I think I would agree that this was done in the first sessions. I thought this kind of had Stevie Wonder vibes to me. I could see this kind of being a song that nobody knows from Stevie Wonder. So, okay, we got to move on. This is so long. The next little bonus track that we're going to talk about is from the box set, which we've brought up a lot with this album, which I think is interesting. There's a lot of interesting moments from this album on the box set. A song called Ain't It a Shame. Music by Barry Manilow. Lyrics by Adrian Anderson. So, this song is also kind of shuffly. And it's very much demo. This is a very demo song. This song obviously didn't make it very far in the production process. But again, it's interesting to hear what other styles he was playing with at this time. Because again, this is a very ballad-heavy album. So it's interesting to hear kind of where his mind was at aside from the ballads. And it was kind of, these couple of songs are the blues. They're the shuffle. And I thought it was really interesting. At the end of this, it stops and you hear him laugh at the end. So he's obviously having fun with this different type of swing stuff that he hasn't really explored before, which I'd be interested to know if there's more of that type of stuff just collecting dust in the vault. I mean, the vault, we know, has to be massive at this point. So did he really kind of lean into this maybe in some other demos, to the bluesy type of sound? Because the blues is known for expressing emotion. It would make sense that one of pop music's most emotionally charged singer-songwriters would explore an emotionally driven style of music. Barry, what do you think of this track?
It's a really great jam. And I'm glad that they included it on the box set to give you this alternate view. But let me tell you what the revelation is by hearing both Ain't It a Shame as well as You're Running Too Hard. What I learned from these archival songs later coming out is the Paradise Cafe turn, the left turn into Paradise Cafe, was more gradual than people realized. To the public view, it was a shocker. Who would have ever expected that to come? But if you look at what he was writing, he was already feeling the blues. He was already feeling these different styles. And another thing I point out, and it possibly could have been in the batch of songs that ended up on If I Should Love Again, one thing that I wanted to point out is that Goodbye My Love from Paradise Cafe had its copyright registered in the year of 1980. So that song was already there. And so with that, and Ain't It a Shame, You're Running Too Hard, Barry Manilow was really, really exploring this deeply. So knowing that, Paradise Cafe is not a shock. It's not a surprise. It makes perfect sense. So that's, I think, what we learned from these archival songs that were cut from the albums. And of course, once you cut a song from the album, you're kind of moving full steam ahead, and there's really no great place to put it. Although I would go back to You're Running Too Hard to question, why was that maybe not considered as a B-side for a single? That would have been a great way to maybe juice the sales of a single by allowing that to be heard as a B-side, because it would have been a perfect kind of a song for a B-side, something that's from the sessions, but yet it's not something that really fits the album appropriately. But in any case, we got to hear them, and so we're all the more fortunate for that. And Ain't It a Shame, again, if you like the Paradise Cafe album, you will definitely appreciate Ain't It a Shame.
Now we are going to talk about, we have one more song to talk about. Please just stay with us. We have one more song to talk about, supposedly from the If I Should Love Again sessions. And this is something that Barry, my co-host here, has educated me on. And when we started talking about this album, I had no idea that this existed. There is a song. It is another Barry Manilow, Marty Panzer collaboration. It's a song called A Man Like Me. He has explained, Manilow has explained, that this was written as sort of a country song. And back in the year 2000, they were supposedly going to do it for the country special that he did. He had a bunch of country singers come on, and they did a special. It's been on Manilow TV, which, by the way, plug, Manilow TV is the subscription service where you pay X a month. It's not a lot per month, and you get 19 concerts from throughout his career, and you get a new one every month. 18 other ones from the cycle. Barry and I are subscribed. It is perfection for hardcore fans of Manilow like us. And he did this song, A Man Like Me, not on Manilow TV. We don't have official release of this song. But Barry, please explain how we know he did this song in concert.
Yes, so I've had someone that I know who had attended his concert at Wembley Arena in January of 2000, and he explained apparently to the audience that he had this country song that he recorded many years ago and didn't make the album, but he was going to be doing a special with country music artists that he was going to be taping the next month, and that was the Manilow Country Music Special that aired on the TNN network, that was short for the Nashville Network, that used to exist. It used to be a cable channel back in the day, and I remember it very well. And I watched that TNN special, and obviously that's a whole discussion for another episode, that the TNN special. But interestingly, he introduced the song and he sang it live at Wembley Arena. Now, the reason I know this song is that in 2009, Barry Manilow actually released the recording on his website. He published it on his website. You could stream it and listen to it, and it was up for about a couple of weeks. I listened to it and I transcribed it, so I do know the melody and the lyrics and how it goes. I am very fortunate that I did that.
Absolutely.
So I'm very fortunate that I do remember everything because I wrote it all down. And it's a really beautiful song. I hope that maybe there'll be some sort of archival project where we will get to hear it again, because it is a really fine song.
I thought of the three kind of bonus tracks-ish that we've talked about. This one certainly felt like it would fit the most on the record. All right. We did it. We made it through all the songs. If you are still with us, you are such a trooper. Barry, we're going to do a cool little segment right now. This is going to be the first one of Season 2. We started Season 1, and we ended Season 1 with a match. Are we going to get a match again? What's about to happen, Barry?
So this is the MVP contest. Logan and I are each going to pick somebody who was involved in the creation of this album, and we are going to award them the MVP, Most Valuable Player of the Album. So the only rule really is that it can't be Barry Manilow, because he would always be the MVP of every album. So, Logan, do you have your selection?
I have it right here.
Okay. So on the count of 3, we're going to show it to the camera, to each other for the first time, and we're going to see if we match. So, all right, on the count of 3, ready? 1,
Here we go.
2, 3. The production team. I said Gary Keefe. So why don't you explain who you or what you picked?
So the production team, as far as I could find, I have 4 names here. I'm going to lump them into a group. It's Michael DeLug, Ken Perry, Gary Boatner, and Ira Siegel. These are the 4 people that had a hand in producing the album alongside Barry Manilow. But I have to say, this was the first album that we've discussed where it actually pained me to not be able to give Manilow the MVP. Because, man, this is one of Manilow himself's greatest works. So I went with the production team because we keep talking about how this is the most romantic album in the Manilow discography. And as I was looking through the list of people who played on it to see if there was one particular player that kind of grabbed my attention, I felt that everyone contributed so equally to this album that it didn't feel right to give it to one person, and I certainly didn't want to give it to, 20 musicians as a whole. So then I started thinking, what is it that makes this album so special? And to me, it's the way it sounds. When I think of these songs, I think of the album. When I hear No Other Love, I think of the album. When I hear Fools Get Lucky, I think of the album. And it just has so much to do with the way it sounds when you hear these songs. Because you hear them live and you're like, yeah, but there's just such a interesting energy to hear these songs in the original recorded forms. I had to give it to the production team. Barry, you're giving it to Gary Keefe. What was his role in this album? Please tell everyone.
We do know something because Manilow put this in the public sphere in his memoir, Sweet Life: Adventures on the Way to Paradise. Right before this album production began in January of 1981, it's stated specifically because Barry Manilow recounts a conversation he has with Gary, and he references the passing of John Lennon that happened in December of 1980, so it happened right there in January of 1981. And he had Gary, who was starting to take a role in his career, and Gary conducted a financial audit. And one day, Gary came over to Barry's house to tell him the news of what he found, and he had dire news that Barry Manilow, in his entire asset portfolio, had $11,000 in the bank, and which is essentially broke. After 50 million records and #1 hits and multi-platinum albums, Barry Manilow had absolutely nothing to show for it.
Wow.
And at the moment, the way Manilow describes his reaction was, he went for a dip in the pool. Okay, I would go for a swim now. And Gary's like, no, this is serious. Do you understand? You are broke. And in the liner notes of the box set, I was reading that, and Manilow said that in the early 80s, he went bankrupt, and he said he went into a deep funk. And I don't blame him. I would too. Yeah. If I'm in 1981 and I'm told I'm broke, in 2025, I think I would still be underneath the bed covers, still right, wallowing that I lost everything. I had it all and I lost everything. So when I give MVP awards, I award them on the basis of, if this person was not involved, this album would not have happened, or would not have been as great as it was. And I think that if it was not for the structure that he brought into his business world, I don't know if Manilow would have had the ability to be creative and be able to create an album like this, because clearly this is a masterpiece. If I Should Love Again, we've talked about that so much. So I think that a lot of credit needs to go to Gary for getting him in order and able to get working again and creating a classic album. So maybe what was how he was feeling very low at this time, but nevertheless he churned out some great art. And I don't think that would have happened without a steady hand. And when you get to a level of stardom like Barry Manilow got to in the late 70s, you become completely isolated. There's really nobody able to help you. Only you can help yourself. And Manilow has talked about that lesson many times. He said in the mid-80s, you have to save yourself. Nobody's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. But he did have Gary's guidance in getting back on track, and slowly but surely he got his life back into order, and then he went on to do many masterpieces like Paradise Cafe, Swing Street. And I think Gary certainly should get a lot of credit for that artistic renaissance. And as Manilow said in the liner notes of the Swing Street album, well, Gary Keefe is a genius. And that's all he says in terms of Swing Street. I think this is the first possible work of art that Barry Manilow has ever produced that we can say, if not for Gary, this would not have happened. But that can be said again about everything, like the Gershwin residency, the Music and Passion residency. None of that would have happened without Gary's support. And now I would be remiss to just move on from this segment without mentioning something really special, that within the last decade, Barry and Gary have chosen to share their personal story with all of us. And their story is that they are together and they are married, and we're so happy for them. And to know that all this time that Manilow did find what he was looking for in all these songs, he's searching for love, and he found it, and that's just a great thing. And I hope that the experience of them sharing their story has been a positive one, and I know that Manilow has reflected in interviews that it's been a very positive experience. But again, I'm awarding this to Gary for just his business role and getting Manilow's life in order so he could get back to creating and doing what he did best, because that's ultimately, I think, that's the cure for what ails you, is to just create and be creative again. And I know that Manilow has said how the Paradise Cafe experience was such a rewarding and renewing experience. But again, that does not happen without the support. And so ultimately, Manilow's career comes down to two people, Clive and Gary. Those two people who have supported him all this way, all this time. I mean, artists really do not get that lucky to have that singular and loyal support. And especially when MTV comes around in the 1980s and the styles change, the trends change. But Clive and Gary, they stuck around and they were in it for the long haul. And so we, the fans, owe a big debt of gratitude. So MVP of If I Should Love Again goes to Gary Keefe.
Well, we did it. When we started this, I knew it was going to be long, but oh brother, was it long. We want to thank you all for hopefully making it to the end of this. This was the season debut of season 2 of the Manilow Method. We want to encourage you to find us on YouTube. If you're listening to us on a streaming platform, thank you. If you want to find us on YouTube and find out what we look like and our story and everything, you can find us on YouTube at The Manilow Method. Just go to themanilowmethod.com. That takes you right there. Subscribe to our YouTube. Find us on social media, Facebook and Instagram at The Manilow Method. And we also have a Gmail address, themanilowmethod@gmail.com. Please reach out to us. If you've seen him live, please tell us what you've seen live. And actually, we have made a Doodle form that we are going to start linking in these videos. If you want to fill it out and tell us where you've seen them live, answer some questions for us. We're just looking to fill in as many gaps as we can because there's so many stories and so many events that have happened. We can't keep track of them all by ourselves. So we greatly appreciate your support, your feedback, your input, and all of your stories that you give us. And we really appreciate you tuning into our show. Whether you're a returning viewer or this is the first time you're listening to us ramble and just spit nonsense at each other, we really appreciate it. Barry, please very briefly tell everybody new here how this show works.
Yes, so we are celebrating If I Should Love Again, one of Barry Manilow's landmark albums, and this celebration is not over because we're going to continue the celebration with performances. So coming up, Logan is actually going to release a cover of a song from this album. Then I am going to release a cover from this album, and we will have a grand finale where Logan and I are going to collaborate on one of the songs from this album. We're going to sing it together, and we're going to publish it on our YouTube channels and our social media channels, so stay tuned for that.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. We're so happy to be back with Season 2. We're so happy to be continuing diving into the discography and history of Barry Manilow's career, and we cannot wait to dive into more albums in the coming weeks as we progress through our second season, and we will see you next time where our next discussion takes us to a high and windy hill. We'll see everybody. We are the Manilow Method, and we will see you very soon.